Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Welcome in, everybody. It is Sports Daily. It is a Tuesday edition. I'm Jacob Albracht alongside Tommy Castor. Chad Chambers producing for us today. Man in that IHOP hotline, which is always open for you at 869-1240. Glad to be here today as we make our way through training camp and the TBT tonight in a regional quarterfinal. It's the Aftershocks trying to get back to that final grouping again this year. We'll see if they can do it. We'll have Trey Wade, one of the Aftershocks, joining us here at the top of the next hour to look ahead to Team Heartfire and what they expect tonight. Looking forward to that. We've got all kinds of stuff. NFL, some Major League Baseball. John Sherman just sent a letter to Royals fans. We'll get into that just a little bit. Lots of interesting things happening. Sort of a cornucopia today. Tommy, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of little nuggets like here and there in different areas that we want to get to. A really weird story last night involving Kansas football that I know we're going to get into. Saquon Barkley has a new deal. There's just a lot of different things happening and looking forward to getting into it.
Let's start and bounce around the NFL just a little bit. Running backs have been an interesting storyline thus far. Saquon Barkley, who's, one of the two most notable, along with Josh Jacobs, two of the leading rushers last year that didn't have deals. Well, Saquon Barkley signs a deal that's very similar to the franchise tag, just a little bit more money, which is an interesting development. If that's sort of a benchmark for Jacobs, I think the Raiders can get that done, and this may not last too long. But that's good news for football fans. We want to see these players in. Doesn't solve the long-term problems we've been talking about, but there's that. The biggest holdout, Tommy, that is happening right now isn't either one of those guys. It's Chris Jones. That's what's crazy. These running backs have been such headline grabbers, but the most impactful player, and Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs are both impactful. They were, the leading cogs of each of their respective offenses last year. But Chris Jones is the most important defensive player, one of the best in the league on the Super Bowl favorite. He's not in camp, and boy, it doesn't seem like they're close right now. So we continue to follow those storylines. The injuries become the biggest storylines in training camp. And as we talk about the Chiefs, what a weird day for Kadarius Toney news yesterday, Tommy. Travis Kelce breaking some news that sort of had everybody, tilt the head a little bit like, what? He tweaked his knee and he's going to be out maybe into the regular season. Well, then Adam Schefter reported later in the day that that's not the case, and he's expected to be ready to go for the start of the regular season, which still tells me that it's pretty serious if he's going to miss training camp potentially. And then Kadarius Toney came out himself and tweeted basically that the reports were not completely true. He'll be good to go. I suppose he means Travis Kelce's report, because that's the only place it came from. Like, it wasn't it was Travis Kelce talking about Kadarius Toney and how important he is, and they hope to get him back, if not out, maybe into the regular season. What a weird day for Kadarius Toney news.
And it's absolutely worth being a little bit concerned about, knowing Kadarius Toney's injury history, right? I think that if it was basically any other player, you might be like, okay, well, I'm sure that he'll bounce back and be okay. With Kadarius Toney, you almost want to put him in a plastic bubble, and just keep him safe at all costs. And really, I don't know. And I mentioned this yesterday on the show when we got the report that he had tweaked his knee. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to shut him down. Even if he wasn't injured, I'm not sure it's the worst decision in the world to hold him out of the remaining training camp days into the preseason. And I know that there's the argument that can be made that you're losing out on, precious time to get more acclimated with the offense and work with the new set of receivers and, continue to build that rapport with Patrick Mahomes. But man, like knowing the kind of talent that Kadarius Toney possesses, the skills and attributes that he has, there's really, in my mind, I think the risks outweigh the benefits of keeping him in there. And so I like the idea, regardless of an injury, to just shut him down and get him ready for week 1.
I do too. I mean, he hasn't been there so long that you feel like, yeah, he doesn't need to be there. I do think he needs to be in camp. Like, I think the best thing for the Chiefs would be for him to get healthy and get reps, right? So they can sort of place guys where they think they're going to have them. But it'll be interesting to see how the Chiefs, because they're obviously seeing the same things we are. They knew the risks of Kadarius Toney when they went and traded for him very aggressively last, season, is that availability is his biggest problem. And so, they did draft a receiver. They're high on Justin Ross continuously. They brought in Richie James. Like they've made that room deep, I think, intentionally. And what will be interesting is how do you plan for and prepare for not having him? It's not an advantage for the Chiefs to be able to do that, but it is at least probably a precursor to what's almost certainly going to happen in the regular season based on what we've seen thus far in his career, and that's that Kadarius Toney is going to miss games. He's supremely talented, but he misses a lot of games for whatever reason. So, extra time for the Chiefs to prepare for that inevitability might be, somewhat advantageous, but you'd certainly like to have him on the field. I mean, there's no question about that. Andy Reid's training camps are notoriously tough. They're grueling. That's intentional. They do that on purpose. It's been well documented. So could Toney hold up through that anyway? I don't know. But whereas like Isaiah Pacheco, I don't think he gains or loses anything by not getting reps in the preseason. I do think Kadarius Toney could gain, right, by getting reps in preseason games and Patrick Mahomes getting reps with him. I think it's different than Isaiah Pacheco. But you got to do what you got to do. And honestly, the best thing they can do is prepare to not have him for, I mean, whatever it ends up being, you got to have a plan. You can't put it all, not that they would, and the Chiefs aren't going to do this anyway. This isn't something like that they wouldn't do this because they didn't do it last year. They're going to be prepared without him, but they will have a plan, and they have to have a plan because here we go. He's practiced one day, yeah. First day out.
Yeah. And make no mistake about it. When the Chiefs acquired Toney, you better believe that they acquired him with the thought in their mind of, we're going to also have a contingency plan if he can't stay on the field. And, that plan can always shift. I'm sure that it's different coming into this season than it was when they acquired him last season and through the playoffs. I mean, you lost Juju Smith-Schuster and you've acquired a couple of other wide receivers this season. So they've got, I don't know exactly what it is, but you would think that they have a contingency plan, a backup plan for the times that Toney can't be on the field. And whether that's in training camp or preseason, or if that's midway through the season, I guarantee that, not only Andy Reid, but now Matt Nagy is the new offensive coordinator. They've got in their minds exactly how they want to run that offense with Toney on the field and without Toney on the field. So I'm not concerned about a lack of preparedness from the Chiefs' point of view. I think it's more of, from Toney's point of view, how comfortable can he be in the offense? I mean, remember, he only played a handful of games with the Chiefs last season. How comfortable will he be in this system? And, let's say that he misses a period of time during the regular season. Does he get left in the dust? Does he drop down the depth chart? Do we see him struggle? I don't know, because again, like, his physical attributes are great. It's just a matter of whether or not, he's going to end up being acclimated and set up well in that system.
I don't think he gets left in the dark. I honestly, like, it. They have to just prepare for times that you have him and times that you don't. And I think that here's what I don't know about what they'll do. Like, does he have a clear backup in the offense, or is he solely a used player that you either have or you don't? And when you don't, you just play offense.
You change the offense. I think that's what it is, because I'm not sure there's another wide receiver on that roster that mimics him. Even
there aren't
to
a lot
a
of
backup
receivers
extent,
in the NFL that mimic him. I mean, he is a unique talent, and so I and everybody knows that. I mean, that's why everybody was like, "Oh man, the Chiefs just traded for Kadarius Toney. Watch out!" But the obvious risk is he's got to be on the field to play. And I don't know why he's, reportedly returning punts, which is where that injury came from. Even if you want him to do that in, in game, which, I'm not totally opposed to that. Just have him catch the ball. But at the same time, Tommy, we really going to wrap up a third-year player in bubble wrap? At some point, you got to play, right? You can't just can't think of a good term that's not going to get me in trouble. You can't just you got to be able to play, and a part of playing is practicing, and you have to just go. And if he gets hurt, he gets hurt. The Chiefs have done a nice job in that room of putting players in place to be prepared for when he's not on the field. So I don't necessarily think Isaiah Pacheco, I would be fine with the bubble wrap treatment, right? Because what he does, nobody else on the roster will do. And it doesn't he's going to take a beating the way he runs the ball. He doesn't need to practice that. Nobody needs that. The defensive players don't need him running into him either, quite frankly. And he seems to have one gear and it's full speed, and that's it. So him in bubble wrap is fine. Man, Kadarius Toney doesn't need to be in bubble wrap. At some point, you got to be able to play. You got to be able to go through non-contact drills, right?
Yeah, I think the other thing to keep in mind, though, with Toney is that, remember, when the Chiefs traded for him, it was viewed at the time, and I think still viewed at this time, as a low-risk, high-reward trade, right? And so everybody was excited, I think, with the potential that Kadarius Toney has possessed, and we saw brief flashes of it in his tenure with the Giants and then what he did in college. But I think at the time, and I still view it this way, all right, it's low risk. We're going to give up a couple of late round draft picks to get him.
A third.
Oh, it was a third, but it was also a sixth. I mean, I think it was still fairly low risk with the potential of it being
risk. I'm fine with the risk.
Yeah. I mean, he was a first round draft pick, right? So I think you're giving up that. I would agree with you. Appropriate draft picks for him, with the thought of, can he fulfill this potential? And we had the conversation just the other day about how many games he would play where you would look at it and say, okay, that's all right. If he plays 10 games, that's all right. If he plays 12 games, that's all right. I don't exactly know what that marker is. But I mean, I don't disagree with you that you want to see him out there and practicing, but at the same time, if they did give up a third and sixth round draft pick, which they obviously did, maybe you do want to protect that investment a little bit more. Maybe you want to make sure that, you're not just throwing him out there in risky situations like punt returns and things like that. And don't get me wrong, he's a dynamic punt returner.
Non-contact in practice, I'm
talking about in game. I like him as a punt returner. He had that great punt return in the Super Bowl. But if did you trade him? Did you bring him in to be a punt returner, or did you bring him in to potentially be your number one wide receiver? And if you're opening him up to potentially returning punts and getting injured, maybe you just have him stick to be a wide receiver.
Well, I think you bring him in to be a game wrecker and a game changer. And at that scenario, returning punts does make some sense, right? If there's so much risk in him being there, you can't plan an offense around him. I mean, I just don't think that it's safe to do that. So if if he's going to be sporadic, I don't have a problem using him in those situations, especially in critical games or into the postseason, right? Maybe you have two punt returners and he becomes your, this punt return, we actually may need something here. And you're not just, cruise control or whatever. But it's a really interesting dynamic because they knew what the risks were, right, when they traded him. And the Giants were very willing to trade a talent like that. That's a red flag. But it's a red flag that the Chiefs can very obviously see too, right? Sure. Everybody knows it's a red flag. He's got some off the field. He's just stirring stuff up a lot, right? And he's injury prone. And so, okay, that's why we like the Chiefs, right? The Chiefs can get control of that and they'll be fine. But I mean, Travis Kelce, the reason any of that happened yesterday is he was trying to explain, we need this guy. He's he can change everything for us. And I think that that's true. But what I think we really need to start to see now in the preseason and training camp is who's going to be the more traditional number one, right? Yeah. It ain't going to be Kadarius Toney because he's not reliable enough. So who can step into that reliability role for Patrick Mahomes? I would love. I mean, it would be such a cool story if it was Justin Ross. Obviously, the talent's there. He never plays, so I don't know how we count on that. I mean, it has to be Sky Moore. And, I don't think Rashee Rice is that kind of player. Maybe I haven't seen Rashee Rice play football. I didn't watch a lot of SMU football. So I'm not going to, sit here and make some bold proclamation about a player I've literally never watched play. So Sky Moore needs to be that guy. I hope that would be a massive development in this training camp if he can be that guy. Justin Ross, go for it. But again, he's got some of the same. We've never seen Justin Ross play in the NFL, right? We saw plenty of him in college. He's a stud. But he hadn't been able to play in the NFL. I think they have options, though, and I'm not that worried about it. And I'm kind of totally fine just saying, you know what? Kadarius Toney's just going to be great if they have him, and whatever if they don't. They'll be fine either way. And he totally will change their offense when he's on the field. I mean, he will. But he's got to be there. And, I mean, what is the number of games that you'd be happy with? 10 is not enough, by the way. 10's barely over half anymore in the NFL. Like, can he get to 13, 14 games and deal with the tweaks and the nags? I mean, we said this yesterday, a part of playing football in the NFL is you got to be able to play through that stuff. And this one was an aggravation, according to Schefter, of an offseason knee surgery. That could also mean more caution. But, man, I get the indication that this is pretty serious. Like, whether you believe Travis Kelce that it could bleed into the regular season, or you believe that Adam Schefter's report that says, which was probably damage control by the Chiefs, by the way, which is, I assume, why Schefter reported this, because the Chiefs were like, whoa, Kelce, we can't do that. Here, Schefter, here's a nugget for you, which is that he's expected to be back by the start of the regular season.
Yeah, I'm still not buying
Travis
that, though,
Kelce,
to be honest with you.
Listen,
I'm not
Travis
buying that.
Kelce's not just going to make that up, okay? Right. So he probably thought that something was out there that wasn't. And good for Kadarius Toney for trying to get ahead of it on his own and tweeting, hey, I'm going to be fine. But, man, you don't have a long track record of really believing that. So let's see you get on the field. He's an interesting player. We've known this all along. The fact that it literally happened on day one of anything, I think needs to tell us we got to pull those expectations way, way back and just treat it honestly like it was last year. I mean, that's right. Sort of, that's the blueprint, just what they did last year.
But that's the problem, though, is you don't quite have the level of, I guess, proven wide receivers on your roster this year that you did last year. You might still have
just
the same level of talent,
the only
right?
Difference.
But I mean, you're losing that proven ability in Juju. When the Chiefs lost out or missed out on DeAndre Hopkins a couple of weeks ago, I thought, all right, that's fine. They still have a pretty good wide receiver room. Toney leading the way if he can be healthy, and Sky Moore, and even Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who can show up from time to time. Richie James sounds like he's having a good camp. And then you've got the young guys, the Justin Rosses and the Rashee Rices and Richie James. Until the Toney injury happened, now I'm starting to get concerned a little bit more, because I have that same question that you do. Who is the true number one? And I think it's got to be Sky Moore. I think Sky Moore has got to insert himself into that number one role. He hasn't proven that yet, but this would be the year for him to, I think, take that next big step forward.
Let me ask it to you this way. You mentioned you got to replace Juju Smith-Schuster. 1-for-1 right now. Are you trading Juju Smith-Schuster for Sky Moore? Like, if you've got your pick?
I mean, I would take Sky Moore. I mean, I think the potential level is there for Sky Moore.
It's not even close.
But I'm not talking about talent level. I'm just talking about proven ability. I know. Proven statistics. And I think Sky Moore can get there. We just haven't seen it from him yet. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. This is the year if Sky Moore is going to be the guy.
The opportunity
for him right now.
Yep. The opportunity will be there for Sky Moore this year because of no Juju, because of what we're seeing out of Kadarius Toney right now. You and I play fantasy football. It's been interesting. I've done I do these things called best ball. And if you don't know what that is, basically you draft a team now and you don't ever touch them again, right? Like whatever points they accrue throughout the season. And I've ended up with Kadarius Toney quite a bit there because I feel like when he's there, his upside's really high. but I don't have Sky Moore yet. And I'm like, man, I should probably be getting in the Sky Moore business, because I think that, like, the opportunity, and here's what I would bet you right now, is that when we get into the preseason, the buzz around him will probably get really high, because there's going to be or you'll see it in camp, right? Because again, and this matters. This isn't fake or man, like, if there's a rapport being built with Sky Moore at all in practice, and it's sort of happening with Justin Ross, but again, like, I don't know what to think about Justin Ross. But if you start to see, some of that report, like, man, Sky Moore and Patrick Mahomes really seem to have a connection right now. And then they get into the preseason and Mahomes hits him a couple times on 2 drives or whatever. You're going to start to see the buzz around him really elevate. He didn't have the opportunity last year, right? I don't know that Andy Reid puts players in the doghouse. I don't think that that's true. But, the punt thing got messed with him, right? And it was very clear. But by the end of the year, they were going to him in some pretty big spots. And I think that what we'll see is him become option 1, Tony to become just this X factor when he's there, right? Like, whatever it is. But that's what's weird too, Tommy. There was a game, I think, where Tony was playing like the Cowboys, where he had something just stupid, like 10 catches in the first quarter or half or something. So that's in his DNA too. It's just this availability problem.
Right.
I don't know, but
the one thing I will say too is that if Tony does end up missing time in the regular season to start the year, the Chiefs cannot afford any other injury in the wide receiver room. They can't afford it. Like, they've got a lot of bodies, right? Like, they've got a lot of players in camp right now at that position, but I don't think you can afford another injury to, I mean, God forbid Sky Moore, but even to one of the other guys, that you're thinking about leaning on, because that room then becomes very, very thin experience-wise as you get into the regular season.
There's no team in football that could withstand the loss of their top 2 receivers. I mean, just every team would be in that scenario. I do think the Chiefs actually have good depth, because if let's say that happened just in a game or whatever. I mean, unless Justin Ross is also hurt, which they keep on, go into that well, which makes me think he probably is going to play. You have Marquez Valdez-Scantling. You drafted Rashee Rice early. You'd have Justin Ross. You'd have Richie James and Travis
Justin
Kelce.
Watson's still on the roster.
I know
also.
there are worse rooms even with that loss. I do think for last year, as much as I didn't like that wide receiver room and had concern about it until they traded for Tony, I really like the depth in that room this year. I do think they have built themselves up. And that's what'll be interesting this preseason. Like, do all of these guys line up everywhere, which is what I predict will happen? That's what I've thought from day one, is that all of them are going to line up all over the place and move around and do this stuff. Because if you can get them going that way, and I don't know if Justin Ross is capable of that again. I'm not sure. But if he is, then you can withstand these losses, because you just keep rotating guys in all those different spots, right? And Travis Kelce is the alpha, which we know he's going to be anyway. I think it's a position of strength for them this year.
One of 2 things is going to happen this season with that wide receiver room. Either they're going to be players that are going to be revelations that we're going to look at and say, man, they came out of nowhere. They're amazing, and they're going to be the next foundation of wide receivers for this team. Or we're going to look back on it and say, man, it would have been nice if there was at least one wide receiver in that room that had some experience that could go out and do something. It's going to go one way or the other. I'd like to think that with the step forward we saw from Sky Moore towards the end of the year last year, that it's going to be the former and not the latter, but time will tell.
It'll be good. They'll be okay. Kadarius Toney, I don't know what to make of the injury with all the news yesterday, which is where we started. I don't think we're going to see him in the preseason. I mean, I don't think he's going to be healthy. I think Travis Kelce tipped the hand just a little bit there on how serious that is. 869-1240 is the number to call to the IHOP hotline. Let us know what you think about it. We can look around elsewhere in the NFL. I want to get Tommy's take on this KU story from last night. It was interesting. We have that. We have the TBT coming. Trey Wade at the top of the hour. We have some giveaways still to come as well. There's a soccer player making potentially $1 billion a year. Saudi Arabia up in the ante again here, which is just like, what in the hell? We'll get into all that. 869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. Albracht and Castor. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back in, everybody. It's Sports Daily right here on KFH. It's Albracht and Castor. Glad to be here with you on this Tuesday edition. Let's give away some WinSurge vouchers. 4-pack WinSurge vouchers, good for tickets to any game. You pick the game, and you can go via us at Sports Daily and KFH. We'll do that to the first caller right now. 869-1240 is that number. Good luck to our giveaway. Thanks for listening here on KFH. Thanks for watching on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, to our video stream. You can leave your comments there as well if you're not able to call in. Maybe if you're sneaking in a little Sports Daily while you're sitting at work at the office. Tommy, John Sherman sent a letter to fans today. This happened right before we came on the air. And, I don't know how much people care about this. It's sort of what we've already seen. He talked about, a story that, somebody with a history of the team needs to, came up to him. And basically he at least starts it with, we got to win more games and, reestablish ourselves as a great franchise. And then he gets into the ballparks. The news of the letter is that in the next 30 days, they're going to have renderings on the two sites they're looking at and a decision by late September. So that's the news value of this. I did think it was interesting that he went out of his way to sort of connect the Royals and the Chiefs. I don't know what that's all about. I don't know if you're trying to coattail the Chiefs. He went into some of the other, the NFL draft and the World Cup coming and being a part of that great culture in the Kansas City region. It's probably much to do about nothing to see that in there. But I did think it was interesting. Somebody this weekend was, asking again, like, the Chiefs, could they ever come over to the Kansas side? Boy, I don't know how much the Chiefs care about what the Royals do. But the Royals are going to lose the connection to the Chiefs when they move out of Kauffman. I mean, that's the connection, is that they share a parking lot. That connection severs a little bit. And so I'm like, is he trying to remind us all that, we're still we're still at the Chiefs, we're still at this partnership, but you're leaving that behind. I don't. It was a weird thing to put in there.
The whole thing was weird. You sent me the letter and I read through it and I just I don't know how to react to it. And I don't know if there's been another owner of any team that I've ever followed where I started off as a fan and then very quickly it's turned into what are you doing, man? This is ridiculous. I would have almost rather him not send the letter at all. By the way, Clark Hunt spoke at training camp, I think over the weekend, and said that there was or maybe it was Mark Donovan, the president, one of the two of them, talked about Arrowhead and that they feel like with the proper renovations, Arrowhead could be around another 25 years. So while there may be other, things being speculated about the future of that stadium, I think that the organization understands, at least I would think that they understand, that the best place for the Chiefs to be in the long term is Arrowhead, a renovated Arrowhead. But time will tell on that. But going back to the Royals, I didn't like how, the first couple paragraphs I read, I'm like, okay, he's finally commenting about the fact that this team is terrible and finally talking about being committed to doing what it takes to turn it around. And then that very quickly goes away and it's all about the ballpark. And I don't have a lot of faith and trust in John Sherman and his vision, because literally there is nothing going on that would inspire any kind of faith or trust for the on the field actions of the team, because he's so preoccupied on this brand new stadium. And, so it was a letdown for me to read that letter. First couple paragraphs, I'm like, okay, finally, we're going to get something. We're going to get somewhere. He's dedicating resources to the on the field, efforts for the team. And then very quickly he changes gears and it's all about the stadium again. To me, it was a disappointing letter.
Well, look, I've said this before, the success of the team, it's very unfortunate timing for John Sherman to be trying to get this ballpark done. The timing is brutal, because the success isn't there right now. So it's just, but you can't, when you have this kind of a plan and you're trying to do something as massive as this project is, you can't say, hey, everybody, we're going to stop here while the team gets good. You just can't do that. So he's always been between a rock and a hard place. And quite frankly, he did inherit this mess on the field, right? And that's what's tough about this. A downtown ballpark is probably going to be good for the Kansas City region, right? Just big picture, it does elevate them to some, other cities of similar size that have gotten this done. And it does, put a profile on your city. Kauffman's weird out there by itself. And it doesn't sustain like Arrowhead does, because Arrowhead, you have to go out there once a week, right? And you have this tailgating aspect of it and this legendary aspect of it that's great. Kauffman's a fine ballpark, but it does suck out there. There is nothing to do, right? So while at Arrowhead, you don't need anything to do because you can just go tailgate, right? Can't really do that at a baseball game if you're trying to get out there 3-4 times a week. That's the other thing. Like if you were looking for season ticket holders in the Kansas City area, like you got to make that drive. You got to do all. So I get it. And I don't think it's a bad thing to move it in. How it's paid for, that's a discussion for another day. But just the idea in general terms of a downtownish ballpark for the Kansas City area is good. Like it's going to be good for the city. It sucks for John Sherman that the team sucks right now. And, there's no other way. He can say it until he's blue in the face and write letters about it and, do all these things all he wants to. Nobody believes it until you put your money where your mouth is. I mean, that's the reality.
But here's the thing too, look,
if you're not aggressive with payroll,
right?
It doesn't mean anything.
But we're also just a few days away from the trade deadline. And this organization is in a position, I think, to be able to make some moves at the deadline that can maybe marginally help them in the long run. Maybe. It sure would have been nice to hear from John Sherman. And, maybe you've got JJ Piccolo in that letter. Maybe you've got Matt Quatrero in that letter where they lay out some kind of plan, starting with the trade deadline, going into the offseason and into next year on steps that they feel like they want to take to get this team out of the gutter. It wasn't there. Like there's nothing there. There's no plan there. It's just literally, I know it's bad, and believe me, we're going to do everything we can to turn it around. By the way, forget about that. Here's a new ballpark we're going to give you details on in 30 days. Like it's a bait and switch. I read that letter as a bait and switch.
Sure it is. Sure it is, because it has to be, because he has to proceed with the plans to get this ballpark done. That's not something where there's like a flexible timeline, right? Like they have to have this rendered out at a certain time. They've got expiring deals coming up. Like that stuff moves on a rigid timeline. There's no other way to do it. That's what I mean. Like he's caught in this rock and hard place because his focus right now is there. He's got people that are supposed to be focusing on the baseball aspect. They haven't done a good job doing that. So, accountability will come in the offseason, I think. I think that what he can do to really help people with it is, even if it's like a short-term, silly move that doesn't make a lot of sense, make a splash free agent signing. Go. The Reds are putting up Jonathan India on the trade deadline because they have too many infielders. Go trade for a player like that. Like do something that says, guys, we want to have good players here. What sucks is they don't have it coming up. And so like there's not a whole lot that they can do right now to make this team better. That's just the reality of the situation. But in the offseason, they can, right? They can get a little more aggressive. We can go and, look, these young bats aren't going to be it. Let's go throw a couple of darts, maybe more aggressively than we have in the past, right? Not maybe one tier up from the free agents we've signed in the past. But the reality is, Tommy, this organization is snake bitten for a couple of reasons. They haven't developed players, and the players they've given long contracts to in the last, 4 years or so, it's like they've all been wrong, right? You want to show the fans you're committed to winning? Go give Bobby Witt Jr. a long-term deal right now. Do what the Rays would do. Do what the Braves have done. Go lock him up now. That shows me, as somebody that follows the Royals, all right, they're obviously going to be ready to build around Bobby Witt Jr. I'm good. What won't help is probably the most sound baseball decision, and that's to, ride it out and continue to try to develop players in a different way. Because no matter what they do in free agency this offseason, they're not going to win the division. So they're too far away. But it would appease the fans, I think, to some degree. What do you do to do both? You go do something that helps both now and in the future, and you go get Bobby Witt Jr. You buy out a few arbitration years, and try to avoid free agency for 1 or 2 years. That says something to me as somebody that follows the Royals.
And knowing the way that Bobby Witt Jr. has improved his game as the year has gone on, I mean, it's been one of the few bright spots this season for the Royals, despite their win-loss record. So you make a strong statement and you say, this is going to be our cornerstone, and we are going to build around him in the long term. And it starts today. It starts with a long-term deal for Bobby Witt Jr. Wasn't that long ago we were talking about dangling him on the trade market and seeing what you can get in return. I'm completely off. Well, I'm completely off that now. Well, it's like, let's do something now if you want to try to inspire confidence, at least somewhat in this from this fan base, do something that helps you right now while you're also trying to sell them a vision of a new ballpark, whether it's in Jackson County or Clay County.
He's never going to win the optics of this until they start winning games. I do feel for that because he did inherit this on the field mess, and he comes from organizations that have done it well. Real quick, Jason asks the Rangers. I got my Rangers shirt on last night. Thanks for bringing up the open wound of the blown win last night. Thanks, Aroldis Chapman. They lost to the Astros anyway. I'm not bitter about it. He said, do I think the Rangers model is one the Royals can follow? Bad years, spend a ton of free agency. No, that's the problem, is the Rangers bought their way out of the mess they were in. They've never been good at developing players either lately, but they went and spent a ton of money on Corey Seager and Marcus Semien, money that the Royals will never be able to spend. They did develop a few good players. They diamond in the rough, Adolis Garcia, they drafted Josh Young. He's finally healthy. And Jonah Himes, that's just the all-stars. Heim is a reclamation project. They went after, they paid for Jacob deGrom. Now, that hasn't worked, but the Royals are never going to be able to do that kind of stuff. So, no, unfortunately not. And, the Royals have to do it the way that the Rays and the Reds, and that's the way they have to do it. And it's just not there right now. It's no end in sight here. But they'll be playing in a new ballpark in front of 10,000 people while they're not any good. Congratulations to Darren on winning those Win Surge tickets. We'll come back. We'll wrap up hour number 1. Trey Wade coming up soon. It's Sports Daily on KFH.
97.5 and 1240 K.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It is Sports Daily on KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. Quick note on something that is a little crazy here today. Shams Charania is reporting that Bronny James collapsed on the court Monday and had a cardiac arrest at USC, taken to the hospital, no longer in the ICU. Holy smokes, Tommy! What in the world? I don't believe I recall any like underlying medical issues with Bronny James, but goodness gracious, that is terrifying.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Obviously, you want the health and the safety of any player, regardless, who they are, to be top notch when you're playing Division I college basketball. This sort of thing, we've seen it happen from time to time. And it's never good when it does happen. Keontae Johnson, remember, collapsed on the court when he was playing in Florida. Wasn't sure that he would ever be able to play basketball again. These cardiac events are happening. And man, just, thinking about the James family right now, I don't know what this means if Bronny's going to be able to play again, if he'll be cleared to play, if we're looking at him being out for the year for USC. I have no idea, but this is quite a shocker going into today.
Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna get more information on this as time goes along. I believe TMZ reporting that the USC staff was able to get him in stable condition. Thank goodness. We need to get those IED kits everywhere and be all trained to use them. I know we have one at work, but after the DeMar Hamlin situation and this and Keontae Johnson, you mentioned, like, it is whatever. We just got to be paying attention here. That's tough. And I don't know what it means for the season. I imagine that is like nobody's priority at the current moment. But it's certainly something that will just continue to follow today. Like I did not see that coming.
What else can you say? Yeah.
Yeah. I just, lots of information. That is just an initial report. So we just don't have a lot of information. We will have Trey Wade, TBT, tonight, Aftershocks in action, trying to advance to that final, I believe, in Philadelphia this year. We'll talk to Trey Wade about that as he came back to play for the team and has been pretty impactful for the Aftershocks, trying to get back to a place they were and maybe take it one more step to that Millie. We'll do that next. Trey Wade joining us from the Aftershocks, former Shocker, former Arkansas player as well. That's next on Sports Daily.
This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily right here on KFH. We're trying to chase down Trey Wade ahead of the TBT tonight as we get the Aftershocks back in action against Team Heartfire. By the way, right on cue, Tommy, Patrick Mahomes to Sky Moore, who was being defended by a coach in the end zone. But hey, we got something here from Chiefs camp. No, we're trying to track down Trey Wade on TBT. We'll get into that as we make our way through this hour. The Aftershocks playing. It's an ESPN Plus game. Unfortunately, it's not on regular TV, but it's 8 o'clock. It is a yellow out tonight, taking on Heartfire. We'll see what kind of crowd they get. It's the quarterfinal. They hope to break an attendance record. It's always interesting on a weeknight game if you're going to be able to do that. The 8 o'clock tip time probably does help that. Give people an opportunity to get out there, and then you move on, right? And then you're into the Final Four, and you're 2 wins away, and you're playing for $1 million and all that fun stuff. Okay, we have Trey Wade here joining us now. That game again tips at 8. It is Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor here, and now Trey Wade. Trey, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. How are you guys?
We're doing good. How much fun has this been? You come back to Wichita, and you get to play now, and look, you guys, I thought your last game was collectively your best game. I don't know how you felt about it, but got to feel pretty good about your chances tonight.
Oh, yeah, especially in Coke Arena. I mean, that's the biggest reason I came back is to be able to play in front of Shocker Nation and have that extra boost. And, yeah, last game was probably our best game collectively. I still think we haven't been our best offensively, but we figure out ways to get it done in Coke Arena.
Trey, what's that been like for you being back in Coke Arena and, seeing the fans coming out and cheering you on? Does it bring back memories from your time at Wichita State? What's that been like for you?
Definitely bring back memories. Just, I still remember my first time being in Coke Arena, seeing it full. It was a TBT game. So, definitely bring back a lot of memories. It's a lot of fun. It's been fun these past few games.
Trey, that had to be interesting too. And I don't know how many of the guys you knew, but then of course Team Arkansas is the matchup, which you went to finish your career. Did that mean anything there to you to be able to, to play that team? You played for both teams. You're here for the Aftershocks. Was that odd at all for you?
Yeah, it was definitely odd playing Arkansas. Just the coincidence of that happening was definitely odd for me. But I didn't look at it as necessarily a bad thing. At the end of the day, we just trying to win a game. So that was all.
Trey, walk me through that epic comeback that you guys had in the round 2 game. That was incredible to watch. You guys were down early, battled back. The Elam ending came into play, and you guys were able to get the win. What was that like, being in the huddle, being on the court, being a big part of that comeback?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I still don't know how we came back.
Yeah.
I think we just found at the right time, we found a group of guys who meshed well. We had a nice little press going, and it helped us get back in the game. It was fun, though. It was a lot of fun.
Trey, one of the reasons that those kinds of comebacks happen in this tournament is the Elam ending. Now, we've watched the TBT for a few years here, and when you first see it, it's like, man, what is that Elam ending?
Right.
And then you see it, and you're like, I kind of like this. And then after a while, if you're like me, you're like, why don't we have this everywhere at all levels of basketball? How much of a fan are you or are you not of that Elam ending?
I like it a lot. I think it gives the game a sense of urgency. I think it gives the game a nice little challenge. I don't know how I will feel about it necessarily in during the season, being that I'm so used to the game just ending when the clock ends. But it's pretty cool. I know it's entertaining, especially on the fan side. And, it's been pretty fun. So
We had your head coach, Zach Bush, on the show last week before the TBT started and talked to him about, how the team is gelled. And that was when practices were going on. What's it been like playing for Zach, and what kind of coach is he?
Zach is a good dude. First, he's a good friend of mine, especially him and his little brother, Bryce. They're good friends of mine, but, he just wants to win. And we all had that same mindset. So it's meshing pretty well.
Trey Wade joining us, former Shocker, now an aftershock as they're playing for $1 million. They can get one step closer and on to, I believe it's Philadelphia for that Final Four this year with a win tonight over Team Heartfire. How much of a chance have you had to see the team you guys are playing tonight? They were able to beat the KU alumni team. Do you guys have time to go and scout like that, watch film, anything as you're getting ready in this tournament?
So they beat KU the game right before we played. So I had a chance to take a look at them. Of course, I've watched the game over some highlights from YouTube and watch what I can. They're a pretty tough team. I think we just got to match it, and we'll be okay. I think, we haven't seen our best offensive side of the ball yet. So, hopefully it can come at the right time. So
I want to ask you a little bit, Trey, about Tyrus McGee. This is a guy that has really introduced himself in a big way to Shocker Nation and, played at Cali College, but then, went to Iowa State. Now he's back playing for the Aftershocks here in Wichita. And he's made some major, major shots in both or all three games, basically, of this tournament that you guys have played in. What's that been like watching him, and how has he worked with the team?
He's worked well with the team. I didn't really know of Tyrus too much until now. I did a little research on him, and he's pretty much been making big shots his whole career. So he's a big boost for our team. We're glad he's here and a part of Shocker Nation.
He's one of the honorary Shockers here, and so is Caleb Walker. And we didn't realize this, or at least I didn't until last few days. That's a Hutch guy. That he's a local. Caleb Walker's a local. Has that been fun for him? Has he got people here watching him? Do you know? It's a name that snuck up on us, but that's the cool thing about this is you get so many ties and honorary Shockers. And you knew that. You knew Shocker fans were going to take these guys in if they're playing well like this. But that's got to be kind of cool for him, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. I had no idea he went to Hutch. His family is here with him, and he's been a big boost for us too. He's made big shots. He's been aggressive on the offensive end, and he's been playing the right way. And I think that's the best thing about our team. We trying to play the right way and figure out a way to win this $1 million.
All right, Trey, I want to ask you a question that is about one of your teammates on this team, but it's not about basketball. This is something that Jacob and I have talked about a little bit here. How do you feel about the Wheat Mamba nickname that Connor Frankamp has gotten throughout this tournament? I've watched Connor since he was in high school and played at Wichita State, obviously KU. Also, I've never heard this Wheat Mamba nickname until now. And I don't know if you know that people are calling him that all over the place during this tournament. How do you feel about that nickname for Connor?
It feels perfect. Wichita, the city of Wichita belongs to him, man. He was raised here. He grew up here, and he's been building a name for himself ever since he was in high school. We know that. A lot of guys who come through here know that, and being on a team with him is pretty cool to watch him play. He's a good player. He can shoot the ball pretty well, so that name fit perfect.
Trey, have you been able, since you've been back for this tournament, to hang out with, take any time with, or see any of this new Look Shockers team for the regular season? Paul Mill, the new coach. I don't know with all the celebrations and stuff if you guys have all had a chance to interact at all. But if you have, what have you thought about the way things are changing here?
I peeked in there. I went to practice. I peeked in there a little bit. I think it's changing, for the better. Obviously, the whole city of Wichita wants to see the basketball program back where it wants to be. And me playing against Mills, I always had a respect for him. He know how to prepare guys, especially playing against us when he was at Oral Roberts and playing against an American Conference team. He was preparing his team for the post play. So I always respected that, and I believe he'll have his guys prepared for the season.
All right, so Trey, let's and we appreciate that insight because we're always looking for it. And you're right, everybody does want that program to be back to where it was celebrated this weekend with the Final Four runs and things like that. What do you guys want to see? I know that on the Twitter page they're looking for attendance records and things like that. I know people can still get tickets, but how much does that matter? How much do people being in that arena help you guys even now in these kinds of tournaments?
Yeah, a lot, a whole bunch. Like I said, it's the reason why I came back to play. It's that Soccer Nation gives you that advantage. It gives you that push, give you that sense of urgency. And man, we use that. We use that, man. When that place gets loud in there, it becomes very hard to play in there. And we know that. And man, it gets fun and exciting. So.
All right, Trey, what's your plan after the tournament? What's your pro status looking like? What have you got cooking outside of the TBT?
I'm probably going to head back over to Europe. I got a few teams in Germany, Italy, places like that looking at me, and I'm trying to just find the best fit for myself next season and continue to grow as a basketball player. That's my plan.
Travel the world, living the dream. Trey, we really appreciate it. Good luck tonight with the Aftershocks as you guys take on Team Heartfire.
Yeah, appreciate that, man. Thank you.
There goes Trey Wade. Aftershocks need him tonight, Tommy. He's got to be one of the key cogs. And that's the thing. And, getting players that are young, still, in the mix professionally is a key part of this. It's one of the things the Aftershocks have done really well is mixing in, older guys that have all the experience, younger guys that still have the fresh legs, all that kind of stuff. And it is fun. And, Team Heartfire looks good. And Fran Fraschilla, who's one of the better analysts anywhere, really likes that team. So we'll see what happens tonight. I'm excited about it. I wish it was on regular TV, but that's okay.
It's been a little interesting the way that the broadcast schedule with this tournament has worked out, where you've got some games on one channel, some games on streaming, and makes it a little bit difficult to figure out exactly how you're going to watch these games. But man, I was impressed with Team Heartfire when they played Mass Street on Sunday. They looked fresh, they looked athletic, looked young, and really I think kind of exposed Mass Street for the age. And I think experience is a good thing, but man, like that team, and we talked about it
happens
before,
all the time.
Mass Street is old, right? So I think Heartfire was able to exploit that a little bit to get into this matchup with the Aftershocks. So, this could be, in fact, I think this probably is the biggest test that the Aftershocks have had going into a game so far. Team Arkansas was really
I was going to say Team Arkansas was good. I think it'll be similar to that. That's what I kind of envision. I think we're going to see, like, if you watched, let's say, KU in the first round, right? The Mass Street. It's not going to look like that. This is going to look like a high-level basketball game because the teams are grooving now, and they do have that mix. I'm excited about it. I hope that place is packed and crazy and loud like it always is. You can catch it on ESPN Plus tonight again. Tips at 8 o'clock. You're almost certain to get a big, fantastic finish with the Elam ending in play. That's why we love the Elam ending, and it should be a lot of fun. But that comes tonight. All right, let's give another something away here, Tom, and then we'll take a break and we'll get into some of these other storylines. It's been a bit of a breaking news morning here. Biggest contract in NBA history just awarded. And it has contracts on the mind as there's a soccer player being offered $1 billion and all kinds of stuff here. So let's give away some HTO, though. It's going to be another scorcher. It's pretty much going to be a scorcher the rest of the month of July. We'll help you cool off with a couple of free iced teas from HTO. Available to you on the east side at 121st or 127th and 21st. Available to you on the west side at 13th and Tyler. Coming soon at Derby. A couple of free iced tea cards on us here at Sports Daily. More than 25 flavors to choose from. Go inside, try them all for free. It's Christmas in July at the stores, so there's discounts on food and all kinds of fun stuff this week. But check it out. 869-1240 is that number to call to win that. First caller during the break here. We'll come back with more Sports Daily right after this.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back to Sports Daily. Congratulations to Toby for winning some HTO. Stay cool out there, everybody. Grab some tea. Check out the Christmas and July deals. We'll have some swag on sale. You can get jerky and candy for discount today. All kinds of fun stuff. Appreciate Trey Wade for stopping by. If you missed anything with Trey, you can go back and listen for free on the Odyssey app after the show. Chad will get that posted for you. It works just like a podcast. So check that out. Thanks for listening to us on KFH. Thanks for watching our video streams on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. All right, Tommy, more breaking news today. It's been that kind of day in the sports world. Jaylen Brown, biggest contract in NBA history, 5 years, about $60 million a year, fully guaranteed. And boy, right now in pro sports, basketball seems to be the way to go, unless you're great at soccer, which we'll get to in just a minute. But $60 million a year is where NBA contracts are getting up to now, which is just wild money. But Jaylen Brown gets it. And, you know, if that's the market, I think he probably is that kind of a player. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it other than good for him, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is more of the market than it is the talent level of Jaylen Brown, right? And nothing against Jaylen Brown, but I'm not sure that he's a $60 million a year guy. But if the market is dictating that and the timing is there, I mean, I think that it's a timing thing, right? Like he kind of right place at the right time situation.
I mean, it comes to, is he the best player in the NBA to be paid the most? No, I don't think so. But when the market gets to the next offseason and we continue to see these contracts, probably that's just the new, sort of spot that these deals are going to get into. We've seen Damian Lillard with some absurd numbers like that. Just, it is what it is. You know what it makes me think about, though? Like, and I know it's just the timing of the situation. It makes me think, man, these poor NFL running backs, right? Like, we see this money tossed around in baseball, and there's the thought is like $600 million deal for Shohei Ohtani, and we see all these things, and we know what the most valuable sports league in this country is, and it's football. And man, football players don't sniff this kind of money. How, like, is it? Should we be sitting here like the NFL Players Union has to be the worst one, right? Like, why aren't NFL players getting deals anywhere near these?
I don't know. I mean, what is like 12 hours apart or so from the Jaylen Brown deal being announced and the Saquon Barkley deal being announced.
Right.
Saquon Barkley gets $11 million on a 1-year deal. Jaylen Brown in the NBA is getting $60 million a year. There's a little bit of disparity, I think, between the two sports.
Just 30 times more.
Yeah. No big deal.
I mean, I know that they play and there's a component of it that they play more games. I get that. But the physical toll is clearly harder on an NFL player, and the careers are generally shorter. I don't know how the Players Union has let the NFL get away with not guaranteeing contracts. Like that's, I at some point there is going to be a halt in football. Like there to me, it just seems odd, and maybe I'm off on it, but I've always like, how are NFL players not getting guaranteed deals like baseball and basketball players? You've got this most valuable, league in the world that has the greatest physical toll taken and the greatest sacrifice physically on these guys have to make. And they just seem so far behind and now the rosters are bigger. I get it, right? Like rosters are much bigger. So you have more mouths to feed and all these things, but at least the guaranteed money component of it, like the fully guaranteed deal that Deshaun Watson got is just like, he got what? And we're all blown away by it because it never happens in the NFL. But then you look across the landscape and it's happening everywhere else. So I'm just like, what is like at some point there's going to be a nasty labor dispute between the NFL and players, which will break all our hearts, but it's coming. I mean, whenever that happens, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Certainly sounds like the longer this goes on, where you've got right now, it's the position group of running back. It's, probably going to be another position group after this, and that's going to keep on going. I don't know if we're on our way to a labor stoppage at some point, work stoppage and a strike or a lockout or something like that. I don't know what that's going to look like in the world of football, but I do know that, again, we're a long ways away from a new CBA. It's 2030 in the NFL. And if it's gotten bad enough with the running back position where the star players are getting together on a Zoom call to talk about it, I think we've got a lot more coming down the pipe.
Mike says that he thinks it's just because there's more players on a football team, but they're generating more money. And I don't think, look, football players aren't going to get to 60 million. I mean, quarterbacks will, but I'm not saying everybody needs to make that kind of money. What I'm saying is, how is it not guaranteed for the most physically demanding sport? Like that's the part of it that, blows my mind. The dollar amounts aren't comparable. So I get that part of it. But the fact that NFL contracts aren't fully guaranteed, that's the place where I'm just constantly like, how are they that far behind the other sports? Speaking of insane contract news, Tommy, I had to look to see if this was fake, and I don't think it is. It sounds like the Saudis are ready to offer Mbappe, who's a French soccer player who I know the name. I think he's considered one of the better players, if not the best in the world right now. But $1 billion in total to get him over? Like, is that correct? What on earth?
I can't even wrap my head around that. I mean, it's one thing to talk about contracts that, are $304 million that Jaylen Brown just signed, and Patrick Mahomes had a $500 million contract. And I can sort of wrap my head around that kind of money. When you get over $1 billion, when there's a B at the beginning of the word instead of an M, my mind, my brain, and I've never claimed to be smart, I can't compute that. That doesn't work in my head. And especially considering I'm not a huge soccer guy. I don't really follow it all that much. I'm familiar with, this guy and his name and kind of what he's done in his career. I cannot make it work in my mind to offer anybody over $1 billion to play a sport, regardless if it's soccer or anything else.
I'm skeptical that this is real. I still am skeptical that this is reality. I'm looking at things. Clutch Point says that the season earnings for Mbappe of $776 million is more than, just a gob of NBA superstars. And it's not as much about Mbappe, because I don't know that the dynamics and finances of soccer. I just don't. I know it's big, right? I know that Lionel Messi came over and it's for a bunch of money. And then I saw that video of him curling one in there, and I'm like, holy crap, that was unreal. But I don't understand the finances of it. It's more the Saudi play on this that's again just continuing to raise a red flag, I think. Like, how is this possible, and why is it happening? Like, there's got to be, and because at some point, I think, if it's happening on these sports that have international appeal, and we've seen it in golf, right, with the LIV, most high profile. There's rumors that tennis may be the next target. Soccer's always sort of been a target on this. Basketball's an international sport, Tommy, that loves to be international, that has always, sort of turned a blind eye and had its foot stuck in its mouth with the NBA and China, right? Like, it's always been a really blurry, messy situation. So is Adam Silver going to just turn him away if they come calling, right? Because his job is to make the owners money. What about the NFL? I know it's not international as far as, other places playing it, but everybody watches it. I don't know what this all means, but if they got $1 billion to throw at one player, like that's obviously endless money. And what, and it's not even that. Okay, let's take just Saudi Arabia out of the equation for a second. What if China wants to come in and buy an NBA team, right? What if they want to buy an NBA team? Now, are they willing to, comply to our rules and culture and everything else that, where the league exists? Is that mesh? Is that, comparable? This isn't the Olympics here. This isn't some celebration of everybody. Like, I don't know where this potentially all goes and ends. And like, now is it like, yeah, you can have a team in our league if you're an ally of our country at the moment, but of course that switches all the time. Like, there's this geopolitical component to all this that seems like it's not worth the trouble for American sports leagues.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. We're on a slippery slope right now with the geopolitical impact of Saudi Arabia bringing itself into the sports world internationally. And the reason I say that is because I don't think that we're talking about the Saudis owning an NBA team or owning an NFL team. I think what the Saudis would want is to own the NBA and to own the NFL, right? Like, look at what's happening in the world of golf. They're not going out and trying to own individual players. They want to own the whole league. And now you have a PGA Tour Live Golf merger. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, and we're a long ways from that actually being finalized. But if that ends up happening, then you've got the Saudis who own the entire league. I think we're going to see that eventually in soccer. We're going to see that eventually in tennis. then it comes down to, what if the Saudi government calls up Adam Silver or calls up Roger Goodell and says, hey, it's one thing for us to own a franchise. Can we own the league? And what's it going to take? We'll write a blank check. We'll give you whatever you want. We want to own the league. I think that's ultimately the end goal. And I don't know how you stop that. I don't know how. And
because you have to
agree
to sell it. You got to agree to sell it. Look, the PGA is a little bit different, right? It's not run the same way. It's like partially charitable. I think it's like everybody's a contract labor. It's different with the PGA than it is with the league.
Let's use the NFL as an example then. If the Saudis call Roger Goodell and say, hey, put this in front of the owners, let's put this in front of the stakeholders in the league and look at how much of a return that, these teams would get on their investment. Every single one of these owners in the NFL, while they may have emotional ties and whatever to their team, they're businessmen. And if they can profit significantly, and we know the Saudis have endless money, what would be stopping? I mean, there would be no roadblocks in place for the NFL to not sell to the Saudis.
Because nobody owns the NFL, right? The owners own the NFL collectively, pretty much. So, like, you just had to get Dan Snyder. You had to drag him out by his hair to get him to make a $6 billion profit on owning a team, right? So they would just say no. I don't think – I'm not as concerned about that.
Money talks?
Yeah, I think so. I think so because you'd have to have it would be nobody wants to lose that, investment that they have, even if it's because these guys do it because it's fun, right? Like it's their hobby.
They do it because they do it because they can make a lot of money off of it.
I understand that,
right?
But they would all have to do it for that reason. It's not. I'm far more concerned about an individual team, right? And one guy saying, "Yeah, I want to sell my team and do it," because that would be the path. What would you even sell the NFL for? $1 trillion?
I mean, we know that the Saudis have an endless supply.
They just ponied up $1 billion. That's not even close, right? That's not going to get it done. And there are rules. I don't know. I'm not as worried about that. I think that's farther off than individual.
I think that you
ownership.
could probably invoke some kind of antitrust monopoly, type thing. I think that there are.
We don't even know if the PGA thing
get around that.
The PGA thing may not even happen. Like I don't. That's a weird deal too. It's just like in general terms, it's not just them that can do this, right? Like they shouldn't be the only. And I don't even know if like we're afraid of is there. I don't understand all that enough, right? But like China has a lot of money too, and they could absolutely want to own. So they own companies all over the place, right? So who's to say that? That's what I'm afraid of. Like who? It's some doofus like Dan Snyder in China's like, we'll give you 10 billion, right? Like what about 10 billion for the Commanders? That's what I'm worried about. I don't want that to happen. There's not a league that there's basketball leagues. Saudi Arabia could do the same thing they're doing with soccer and golf. They could go offer NBA players just absurd amounts of money if they ever decide to get in the basketball business. But it's not as much, I don't know what interest they would have in the NFL, but I mean, baseball's international to some degree, right? Probably not in the international way that Saudi Arabia cares about, but maybe China or baseball's popular in a lot of Asian countries. Yeah. I don't know. We've seen. I don't like it.
We've seen additional leagues come up, over the years in basketball. I mean, remember back in the day, the ABA was around, and then the NBA absorbed it, and they won out. And then you have the USFL in football, and the XFL, and all these other breakaway leagues. The one thing that a lot of those leagues didn't have was endless amounts of funding to be viable long term. And so it could very well be, maybe it's not, hey, the Saudis are going to go and they're going to try to buy a bunch of teams in the NFL or the NBA or the league itself or whatever. They're just going to go and fund a breakaway league like we saw with the PGA and LIV. And they're going to offer these players a boatload of money to play in the new league. And I mean, you better believe there are going to be players that are going to take that check, right? Like they're going to go and they're going to do that. So that might be another alternative that we could be seeing in the future. I don't know. I just think that this is becoming like it's like a snowball that rolls downhill. It gets bigger and bigger as it rolls downhill. And I think we're right on the edge where, we've seen the Saudis get into golf. We've seen them get into F1 racing. They're getting into soccer. And then if tennis is the next, and then it's just going to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow to a point to where all of a sudden it's going to be unstoppable. And then what do you do?
Well, you have to govern it away. And that's what I don't know. I mean, you can't govern away the, individuals' rights to go play, right? And earn that. But you can, which is probably what we're going to see the beginnings of in this PGA deal. You can't govern it away and say, sorry, you just can't, you don't get to do that. Like, look, the same ideas exist in other ways too, right? Like we won't have foreign adversaries by important infrastructure companies in the US, right? You know what I mean? Like there are rules in place for, and I just wonder if it goes into that because look, the reality is one of America's greatest exports is entertainment. It always has been, whether it's Hollywood or pro sports leagues or whatever it is. Like we love our entertainment. We invest a lot of dadgum money into it, which, we're seeing the same thing in China. That's why the NBA is so popular there. And why they've got a sticky situation just even, existing there at all. And it is dangerous. And I'm with you. I don't like we can sit here and say, oh, that'll never happen, but it's happening.
It will.
Like
it will.
It is happening. And golf will be the big spot for the United States and how this works. And I don't even know. I mean, we don't think we consider Saudi Arabia a foreign adversary at this point. I don't think. I don't know. I don't know. The geopolitics of it is why I like this whole thing is just like, yeah, we probably need to make sure that this isn't happening. Like American citizens need to own American sports entities, but golf is going to be interesting. It's sort of the beginning, and all eyes are going to be on that.
We've already seen something like this happen in English Premier League soccer. One of the owners of one of the teams, Chelsea, was basically a Russian oligarch, a billionaire, and he was forced out. They did manage to basically get through some ruling, some legislation, and this got through Parliament even to force that owner out. So you can deal with situations like this. It's been done.
And that's interesting too, because the Premier League is all English teams, right? It's not like the one where they all play each other. Like that's the one where they're all right there in England.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And those are
that's a good.
It's very similar to the NFL. It's very similar to the NFL. You've got the Premier League, which is the league, but it's very much the teams are owned by the team owners. So that's just...
I think the other thing to keep in mind in this is that as of right now, the NFL and the NBA have teams in America outside of the Raptors in the NBA, right? But it's been very clear, at least from the position of the NFL, and I'm not really sure about Adam Silver and his thoughts on this in the NBA, but it's been made very clear that the NFL wants to expand internationally. There have been those conversations about Europe and these games being played in London and now in Germany, and you've got Mexico games and things like that. The more that these leagues want to expand internationally, as good as it is to grow the game and grow the exposure and the fan base and all of that, you then do open the door to having additional franchises that could very well be owned by people that are outside of this country. And so you have to balance that. You have to figure out how you legislate that, how you manage that. It does open up some other issues that I think that on the surface level, you're like, man, like expanding the NFL internationally would be really cool for all these different reasons. Well, yeah, but there also are some other issues that go along with that you've got to try to figure out.
Here's what I would say will be the most likely scenario of anything happening with the NFL first. It would be similar to what we've seen with like the WWE or the Olympics. And that's that Saudi Arabia would push to host an NFL game. That would be the first thing that would be the red flag, right? Saudi Arabia says, hey, Roger Goodell, we want to give you $1 billion. Come play a game over here. Let's start a series, the Saudi Arabian series, right? And you got to come play, even if it's a preseason game. We don't care, whatever it is. And that just sort of cracks that door open. That's what's happened in pro wrestling, right? With the WWE. They had a big thing about that. It was a big mess because the WWE has women wrestlers, and that's like not a thing. And so you've had this really like dicey situation, but it's money. It's a money thing. And that's what it's going to be. Like the Olympics and countries that clearly aren't equipped to host the Olympics, hosting them, it's all a big money thing, right? We all know what it is. So that will be the first step. If Saudi Arabia wants to get in the business of mainstream American sports, baseball, basketball, football, maybe even hockey, and hockey's a two-country sport, right? But that's what it'll be. It'll be what we're seeing like in Mexico and all these, these places that are friendly with us and all these other things. That's going to be what they offer up. And that will sort of open the door here. We've seen NBA games in China, right? What if Saudi Arabia comes to Roger Goodell and just say, hey, we just want a game over here. We got the facility. We got a great stadium
same
right
thing
here.
Same thing in the NCAA. Brett Yormark announcing games in Mexico. What happens if Saudi Arabia calls Charlie Baker from the NCAA and says, hey, you've got teams in college basketball or college football that go overseas and play an exhibition. Why don't you host a game in Saudi Arabia? It's there. Like
the Shockers are going to Greece.
They're going to Greece
a week.
Right. These things are not new, but they've always been in the vein of countries that are friendly and allies or whatever. What happens if they have $1 billion that they want to, throw on there? And
what happens is the NBA will go play a game there in China. That is an adversary, a very clearly stated adversary.
You know what? Let the PGA Tour and the situation and all the controversy there be a lesson for these other leagues on how not to handle it. If Roger Goodell or Adam Silver, if they ever accept an invitation from the Saudis to host a game in Saudi Arabia, you better not try to virtue signal. Jay Monahan tried to virtue signal and it didn't work. It backfired on him.
Well, no,
I think you got to be straight up. Like, hey, it's about the money. Like, we're making a lot of money to do it.
It's not your responsibility. I say this all the time. Pro sports it tries to, like, pro sports in Hollywood. Like, I just don't take my morality cues from people trying to make money. Corporations, Hollywood, pro sports leagues. Like, if the goal of your company is to make money, which, by the way, I have no problem with, I don't need you to lecture me on morality. There's other places I can go to that for people that aren't solely concerned by making money, right? You can put a fancy slogan or a sticker on your product. Why do you do that? To sell more product, right? Like, let's just be honest about the situation. Yeah, you're right. Don't handle it like the PGA. Let the politicians do that. All right. Somebody will be looking for an election year lightning rod. That'll be where that can get sorted out. I would suspect that, hey, we're coming up on one in 2024. I would imagine that this PGA LIV deal might just get into the political spectrum, and then we're really going to have a hot mess. 869-1240 is the number to call. That's enough geopolitics for about, 6 months for me. 869-1240 is the number to call. We'll come back. More Sports Daily right after this. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. Major League Baseball trade deadline getting close. We got less than a week here and no big moves yet. Still, Aroldis Chapman, probably the biggest one made. Shohei Ohtani sits there. Would teams be willing to make it happen? There are teams. Look, I think the Angels get this rare opportunity when it's almost never there anymore to actually get a nice return on a rental. You got to float it out there. There are teams that would be desperate to do it. And there are good teams with good farm systems that would be desperate to do it. The Rangers, the Orioles, the Rays, all mentioned here as teams on CBS Sports mock trades. Like, there are desperate teams that would be willing to do it. And you have to if you're the Angels, unless you think you're going to re-sign him. But that just does not seem likely.
I don't know. I read a report, I think yesterday, or maybe it was this morning, that said that the two teams that, and they're kind of surprising teams to me, that are checking in on Shohei Ohtani and his availability are the Orioles and the Diamondbacks. And, neither one of those teams were teams that I really thought I could see Shohei Ohtani with, especially long term. But as a rental, these two teams have a lot of young, really talented players that they could provide in return for Shohei Ohtani down the stretch. And that would lead me to believe that both of those teams feel like they're willing and ready to maybe give up the farm for a couple of months of Shohei Ohtani just to try to win a championship.
It's an interesting dynamic. Both of those teams also fit a profile of teams that would really like to win a World Series, right?
Sure.
And they're both in this mix of, present versus future. They're both loaded, right? Both at the minor league level and recent call-ups and really talented young players. And, I keep using the Braves as an example of how to handle having that glut of talent, and they've done a really good job of picking the right people to extend and doing all that. A big run with Shohei Ohtani probably, right, enhances your chances of doing stuff like that too, right? It might cost you a couple prospects, but it's going to generate the buzz and interest and the money that maybe you can go give extensions and those kinds of things to your good young players. So I get it. I think the most obvious teams are teams like Texas, who have a bunch of money, who haven't got over that hump, who are desperate for it and would be willing to push it all in. The Padres fit that profile, although I'm not sure they're close enough. The Yankees always fit that profile. The Giants probably fit that profile. So, I don't, it's going to happen. I do think it's going to happen.
Okay? See, I don't. I really don't. I really don't. And the reason is the Angels are still in the hunt. Like, they're still in the wild card race. I believe it was Ken Rosenthal reported over the weekend that the Orioles were going to wait and see how this week played out. So you have to wonder, man, if they can win their next two series before the trade deadline, at that point, they're maybe a couple of games back from the wild card spot. I think you're more likely to keep Ohtani for that reason, down the stretch.
You are, and that's a tough sell too. That's kind of shoot yourself in the foot. You don't want to lose. You want to contend, obviously, because it enhances your chances of keeping him long term too. I just don't think that's going to happen, but we'll see. It's an interesting one. And then, the other report is that the Mets don't want to trade either one of their aces, which is also an interesting development of, like, why, right? Like, why? Those guys are on the end of their careers. If you can salvage anything, salvage it. 869-1240 is that IHOP hotline. Congratulations to our contest winners today, to Toby for winning HTO and to Darren for winning Win Search tickets. We'll come back. We'll tell you what's on tap on Sports Daily.
Visit Maximum Outdoor Equipment and Service in Andover for your Steel outdoor power tools this season. From legendary chainsaws and dependable trimmers to powerful blowers, hardworking hedge trimmers, power washers, sprayers, and
All right, welcome back, everybody. That's it for us on this Tuesday. Regular programming, Bob and Jeff from 2 to 4. Jim Rome follows us at 11. Before that, the Royals and the Guardians, 6 o'clock right here on KFH. Then don't forget, the Aftershocks, 8 o'clock, ESPN Plus. We'll have it all recapped for you, see if they can get 2 wins away from $1 million jackpot. Hope Coke Arena is loud and rowdy tonight and put Wichita back in the center spotlight a little bit nationally for basketball fans. For Jad Chambers and Tommy Castor, I'm Jacob Albracht. Tommy, enjoy the day.
Sounds good. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow.
Stay cool out there, everybody. We'll see you Wednesday.
Sports, lighter news, and